What about you personally? What's the most powerful tip that either you've been given that you've actually put into action when it comes to networking? Is it just that, as you mentioned, really just getting out and seeing the people eyeball to eyeball? There's obviously some things that have to happen, but maybe you personally, what's the what's the most successful networking tip that you continue to leverage? Or
I think a lot of it just goes back to taking the time, and when you get the ability and you get somebody that shows interest who could help you and be an influencer, just sitting down and taking the time. Those people's time is valuable, but they also appreciate when somebody offers to listen, because people who are experienced always want to share,
right?
And so even if you're I've heard some of the big coaches in college and NBA basketball say, hey, I haven't learned it all, and these are coaches. Coach K, he always says that, I haven't learned it all,
right?
And Coach K listens to high school coaches and tries to get new ideas, and nobody's immune to that, and those people that have accomplished things in life, their gift is that they can share it. And so we should be asking them for it, and in a meaningful way,
right.
and not by blasting them an email and saying, hey, can you answer these 5 questions for my term paper?
Right.
Call them. And even if they're 5,000 miles away, that's more intimate. And
sure.
And again, you're trying to create a team that can influence your career or your career path. So,
two-part question, and just gut reaction to the following. For you personally, and then the second piece I'll ask in a moment. But what intangible qualities have really helped you in your career? Obviously, there's always going to be requirements, hard requirements for some, soft for others. What intangibles, non-credential, all the other things, what really has helped you in your career?
I think a lot of people. I had somebody asked that question the other day about about their education.
Right.
Should they go right back and get their MBA? Should they go out in the workforce? Should they? These are graduating seniors. And I said, actually, I would prefer that you go. They're not mutually exclusive. You can do both, but I would prefer that you go out in the workforce, and then if you want to go back to school, go back to school. But for me, I always want to see diversity of experience and diversity of education. When I don't see as many resumes as I used to, thank God. But when I used to, and I'd see a lot that they might have 2 or 3 degrees in the same school. They might be coming, they come to me with, that's not very diversified to me. I'd even rather see different degree tracks at different universities. Okay. And so that's been helpful to me. I have 2 different degrees in 2 different college worlds at 2 different universities, and my education will never stop. I'll always try and get a certification or pursue a PhD or do those types of things when the time's right. But diversity of thought. My undergrad degrees in marketing and my master's degrees in higher education, they don't match at all. But from a diversity standpoint, I think it's been helpful.
And what about if you flip that around in the hiring that you've done? I'm sure you've done a lot of hiring in the spaces and the places you've been. What are maybe if you had to shortlist it to the top 2 or 3 qualities, intangibles that you look for when you're hiring someone? What would that look like? I'm
looking for somebody to bring something to the table I don't have. So whether it's I talked about new media. We don't have anybody on our staff that has that experience, nor do I want to invest a lot of capital in that. So we actually outsource a feature like that. But I'm looking for somebody that has is superior in an area that I don't possess or somebody else on our staff doesn't possess. So when you come to the table, the 2 things that and I don't do as much interviewing as I used to, but the 2 things that I look for as basically as deal breakers are people that have that first of all say I want to get involved because I love sports. Everybody does. Right. So that's not a differentiating factor. But I want people to come to me and tell me what they can do for things we're already doing or things we're not doing that could enhance what the Sports Commission is all about. Or somebody that brings a valuable Rolodex to the table that says, hey, in your youth sports programs at the Sports Commission, I can move the needle because I know these 5 people and this is what we want to do with those 5 people. So I'm looking for that kind of a thing, whether it's a skill or a power base that can really help us. Great points. I appreciate the insight. And you mentioned interviewing, so let's just kind of dovetail into that real quickly. Maybe there was something that you've done yourself in your career that you knew, either right after the fact, someone gave you some feedback that, hey, it really helped you separate and differentiate from the others, or 2-part question, if you can answer either one. Maybe there is someone that you interviewed with you that you knew, it's like, man, this person, really just, whatever it was, it did something creative, it really made them stand out in a nice, tactful way. Any out of those 2 questions, anything stand out that you can share? Again, the spirit of the question is... I think in good and bad ways, I think the folks that interview just generically, that aren't prepared and don't have specific questions, when they come in and ask, well, what's the Sports Commission about? Or even for interns, we immediately cross them off the list. Right. Because they didn't, again, show the time to be respectful and prepare. Again, even for an internship. We actually don't hire a lot of interns that show up just not professionally dressed. And in our office, we wear ties every day, you know. And so if they show up in jeans and a golf shirt or jeans and a t-shirt or whatever, it doesn't really show respect for the organization, so they don't make it very far. As far as you know, the interview process itself, I think for me, I can tell within 2 minutes whether it's somebody I want on our team or not. And I don't do the initial interview. I usually come in after when somebody on staff has done the interview.
And what is that within 2 seconds that you're looking for?
Can they just interact?
Okay.
And you know, our organization and our industry is very personable. So I need to know, can they interact with me, somebody they don't know, who they might even be intimidated by because I have a silly title, you know, and I'm as down to earth as any other guy. But can they interact with me? Can they look me in the eye? Can they shake my hand? Can they just converse? And I usually have enough tidbits of information to ask them a few questions and see what happens.
Right.
And in 2 minutes I'll know.
Okay.
And whether it's somebody, and then my staff will say, well, we interviewed 5 people, and the 2 that you said are good. You know, this one's probably the better, and we hired that one.
So being authentic, obviously, is always key. I always talk to people about being authentic, and I think that's what you just mentioned. But there's a lot of people that maybe use creativity too much. Anything that you've seen that in a tactful way, hey, some creativity that really helped a specific person, because everyone's really out there scrambling to get noticed and to be seen, but you want to do it, of course, in the right way. Anything, any story there that you can share of either one that's backfired or one that's really worked very well?
I actually have a buddy of mine who and I think there's a boundary, like you kind of just alluded to, that where you could go over the top.
Sure.
My college roommate actually, when he was an engineer, and so he thought out, he wanted this engineering job that was posted, and he said, you know, every engineer is going to send in a gray linen piece of paper with, you know, their name and rank and serial number on it. And he goes, I want to stand out. And he actually filled his application out in crayon and sent it in. Now, in that case, it worked. And he put his resume on pink paper, and, you know, it actually worked for him. I think sometimes in our industry, we'd probably go, what a joker, you know, type of thing. There's some creativity that is open. I think being prepared is first. Also something we do in our office, just because actually myself and the one who does most of our interviews, we're really anal about punctuation, about the fonts being the right sizes, about the bold. We actually don't read so much the resume part or the letter, but the format of it. And so if there are space issues, or if they use there and there or 2 and 2 wrong, we immediately just throw it in the trash. We're out. We don't even want to we're wasting time with the interview because the person can't read and write in a professional manner. We're going to ask them to do that. So we don't have time to coach that. And that's something they should have. So if their presentation, not just personally in person and physically, when their appearance isn't as good as, you know, the writing side too, it's not going to be a match for us. So we just don't waste the time.
We're going to turn gears a little bit. And this actually might be a good question for you. I'm curious to get your answer on this, because you mentioned earlier in an interview that hey, a part of your background is higher education. With the over 300 or so programs, or schools rather, that have a sport management program now. I think there's 320 some on. There's quite a few. Let's deem you a professor. Just right now, by the powers invested in me, I have deemed you a professor, and you're coaching a course in a sport management degree program. What class would you teach and why?
I can tell you what I have taught and why. I was an adjunct professor in one of those programs, and my big beef with those programs is they're not differentiating either. And now there's so many of them, there aren't really enough decent jobs. There's some entry-level stuff, but there aren't enough great jobs to really have these people coming out of school, you know, to get them a position. In my mind, and the ones that I'm involved in, from an advisory or when I was an adjunct faculty, is specialization, and also to, as you mentioned earlier, about, you know, people might not even understand sports tourism and sports commission world. So one of the classes I taught in Denver was a class we created because I was on the advisory board with a bunch of sports guys, and I said we're just building drones like every other program in the country, and we're teaching them to be an entry-level ticket salesperson. That's what we're teaching them to be. And so if we're going to do that, fine, but I don't really want to be part of that. It's not that creative. So the professor, the dean, said, well, what do you suggest? I said, let's teach them a class about sports entrepreneurship. Let's teach them that there are jobs out there they don't even have any idea exist, and they're largely created by smart people. And so we created the class. Took a couple years, and what I did every week is I just brought in an entrepreneur sports person from the Denver area, or, you know, in that metroplex, and just had them talk about how they got there, kind of like we're having.
Right. How'd
you get there? What was the tipping point? When did you realize you wanted to be a professional baseball player, marketing agent who did fishing trips for a living?
Right.
Okay, how did that happen? You know, how did you create a company like Golf Tech, which is out there, which is a Denver-based company? Whoever thought videotaping golf swings 20 years ago was going to be all the rage for lessons for Joe? You know, the pros can do that, but who thought that the general public could have access to that? And so just bringing in those types of people to talk about their vision, I think really helps some of those kids. And hopefully someday I'll be able to go to one of those kids' classes when they're adjunct professor teaching a similar class. But
appreciate it. We're almost there. Last question. Just want to get your take on it. There's so many strategies. There's so many people, have their own thoughts on it. I'd love to get yours. If again, someone that's really dedicated and they want to break into the career in sports, with all the strategies and techniques that either you've got in your brain, how would you shortlist maybe top 3 or top 5 strategies that you would suggest someone to implement to try to make their break in?
They got to get started, especially if we're talking about college students. They've got to get started with internships and things that are recognizable early.
Okay.
The best ones that I've seen, when they come out of school, they're almost ready to just plug and play.
Okay.
Some of the other ones they come out and they really haven't done the roll up your sleeve volunteer work or the internships, and they might have an immaculate academic record. But I want to know, if you're a 4.0 or a 3.2, the differentiator for me, or a 2 point something like I was, the differentiator for me is going to be, what do you bring to the table? And so, again, do you have a network of people we can count on? Do you have an area of expertise that our team doesn't have? And they should learn those through their internships and those things. So
internships number 1 for sure.
And volunteering in events, and there's always a place to do that. And whether it's even taking part of the summer and going to volunteer for one of the mega events, the Super Bowl or a Senior Olympic Games like I got started. We had, I don't know, in Senior Olympics in '97, we probably had 50 volunteers that were there for a year, in different pieces, alongside 15 staff members. So there's always a place, even if you work every Tuesday night at the AA game, taking tickets or being an event ops or being an usher. All that helps. And over time, if you do that and dedicate yourself to that, those people are going to go, hey, that volunteer has upward mobility. We can put them over here. We can make that usher VIP guest services. And then all of a sudden you meet the bank president. Now the bank president's a buddy, and here we go. Yeah, so for me, that's a big part of it.
Okay, anything else as we wrap in terms of any other strategies that you would suggest? I mean, that's obviously a really big one. You could go really deep into that one, and I'm not here to push you for more, but if there is anything else that you would want to add to that in terms of a strategy, a specific strategy as someone's trying to break in, either a college student or a recent graduate?
No, I mean, just building a network, but you can put yourself in harm's way a little bit if you're smart about it, and you can figure out if I need these people to be part of my Rolodex, you can figure out how to get to them.
You bet. You know what? I think I misinformed you. I do have one other question. I want to try to promote you as well, if you're willing, and you don't have to, but if you'd like to either give a website out to your organization, or perhaps there's a blog that you write. Maybe there's something that you'd like to promote personally. If there is, let's do that. And also, so I'm not sure if you're comfortable with that thing about it, but what I know you are comfortable doing, without even asking, is maybe let's give those websites out again for the governing body. We'll do it nice and slowly, and I'll of course put it on the website as well. But there were some trade shows, there were some conferences, I believe, and an overall body that we can maybe just repeat those websites for people that want to look into it.
There's 2 that are really critical. One, our organization is phoenixsports.org, all spelled out, really easy. And the other one that I'm heavily involved with is the National Association of Sports Commissions. And their website is sportscommissions.org. And then their annual meeting is called the NASC Symposium, and that's nascsymposium.com. And that's held every April. It's in Greensboro this year. I know some of our friends from down at the U of A, some of the students are coming to work the event, but it's a great place to network and get started.
Perfect. Jon Schmieder, President. Just like saying that. Does it sound good? Does it sound good?
Great.
President of the Phoenix Regional Sports Commission. Again, appreciate you taking the time right here in Voice of the Box.
Thank you so much.